Welcome back to Fencing Family. And a huge shout out to our sponsor, Fencing Family, on Etsy. Show your love for the sport with their awesome gear. Link is in the description. Okay, so get this. Today we're diving into, well, it's called the Ofmann Quadrant. It's this psychological model. You might be wondering, what does psychology have to do with fencing? Well, trust me, this deep dive is going to be full of aha moments because this framework is all about understanding your strengths and challenges and how to become a better fencer. We're going to break it all down for you. You'll discover your core fencing qualities and how to use those to your advantage, both on and off the piste.
Okay, so let's unpack this Ofmann Quadrant. What are the basics?
So the Ofmann Quadrant, it's all about self-awareness and growth.
Yeah.
It has 4 key components: your core gifts, those natural talents that make you you, your pitfalls, where those strengths might trip you up if you're not careful, your challenges, the areas you can actively work on to improve, and lastly, your allergies, the things that can really throw you off your game if you overdo them. Think of it like a compass to help you navigate your personal development. I'm starting to see how this could apply to fencing. I remember when I first started competing, I would get so caught up in the excitement of the bout that I'd forget to stick to my game plan. Talk about a pitfall.
That's a great example, and the Ofmann Quadrant can help you anticipate and navigate those pitfalls. So you mentioned getting caught up in the excitement. That suggests a natural inclination towards boldness and maybe a love for improvisation. Those are incredible strengths, but they can lead to inconsistency if you're not careful.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So how do we actually apply this model to fencing?
Well, if we look at the world of fencing through this lens, we see that fencers often fall into 4 main profiles. There are the players, who are spontaneous and creative, adapting to their opponent's every move. Then there are the methodical fencers, who value precision and structure. We also have determined fencers, fueled by the thrill of victory. And finally, we have the analysts, the strategists who meticulously dissect their opponent's every move.
I can already see myself and some of my fencing buddies in those profiles. So if I were a player, constantly going for the big flashy move, what would be my pitfall? And how would I turn it into a challenge?
Let's say you're that player. Your pitfall might be that you sometimes sacrifice technique for a flashy move, leading to inconsistency. Your challenge then becomes developing a balance between spontaneity and discipline. It's not about losing that creativity, but honing it so you can choose your moments effectively. Think of someone like a young, up-and-coming fencer with incredible natural talent, but who needs to refine their technique to become a truly top competitor. That's their challenge.
So it's like learning to channel that raw talent into a more refined and consistent approach.
Exactly. It's about recognizing your natural inclinations and then strategically honing them. Now, on the flip side, let's look at the analyst. Their strength lies in their ability to strategize and anticipate their opponent's moves. However, their potential pitfall is getting stuck in over-analysis. I know a few fencers like that. They get so caught up in thinking that they lose their momentum. I bet their challenge would be learning to trust their instincts more right.
Precisely. Their challenge lies in cultivating a balance between strategic thinking and intuitive action. It's about knowing when to step back and analyze, and when to just go with the flow.
It's like finding that sweet spot between thinking and doing, without tipping too far in either direction. I bet we all know a few fencers who need to work on that balance.
Absolutely. And that's where understanding the difference between challenges and allergies becomes crucial. Remember, challenges are those areas we can actively develop to improve. Allergies, on the other hand, are negative reactions to overdoing or underplaying our natural traits. Think of that analyst who overthinks everything, becoming paralyzed by indecision on the piste. That's an allergic reaction, not a challenge they need to lean into.
So allergies are those things we need to be aware of, so we don't let them sabotage our performance. Exactly. The key is recognizing your allergies and finding that sweet spot where you're leveraging your strengths and managing your pitfalls without tipping into those negative reactions.
I'm already starting to see how powerful this framework is. So what's the next step? How do fencers actually use the Ofmann Quadrant to improve?
Well, the first step is self-awareness. You need to understand where you fall on the spectrum. Ask yourself, what comes naturally to me as a fencer? What are my strengths and potential pitfalls?
So it's about getting to know yourself better, both on and off the piste.
Precisely. Once you have that self-awareness, you can start to identify your challenges and figure out how to turn them into opportunities for growth.
This is incredible. It's like having a roadmap to unlock your full potential as a fencer.
Exactly. The Ofmann Quadrant provides a framework for intentional growth,
Ah,
helping you become a more well-rounded and adaptable fencer.
this is so exciting. I can't wait to hear what else you have to share on how to use the Ofmann Quadrant to level up your fencing game.
Welcome back. So where were we? Yes. We were talking about how fencers can use the Ofmann Quadrant to really boost their game.
Yeah, it's all about understanding your strengths
hmm
and challenges and allergies to become a more well-rounded fencer.
Exactly. Now let's dive into some specific strategies you can use. One of the most effective applications of this model is in choosing training partners if you're a player, someone who thrives on improvisation. Partnering with a methodical fencer who focuses on precision can be incredibly beneficial.
Oh, that's a fascinating point. It's like they can learn from each other's strengths and weaknesses. The player can pick up some tips on structure and discipline, while the methodical fencer can loosen up a bit and learn to adapt on the fly.
Precisely. By training with someone whose strengths complement yours, you're constantly being challenged to step outside your comfort zone and develop those areas where you might naturally struggle.
And it's not just about technical skills, right? This could also apply to mental game.
Absolutely. For example, if you tend to get nervous before competitions, training with someone who is calm and collected under pressure can help you learn strategies for managing your anxiety.
So it's like having a built-in mentor right there on the piste with you.
Exactly. And think about this. The Ofmann Quadrant can even help you figure out the best way to approach different opponents. During a competition, let's say you're facing a very aggressive fencer. If you're naturally a more cautious and strategic fencer, you might be tempted to match their aggression. But that could play right into their hands.
Well, that makes sense. You'd be fighting on their terms instead of your own. So how would the Ofmann Quadrant help in this situation?
It would remind you to stick to your strengths. Instead of trying to out-aggress an aggressive opponent, you might focus on using your strategic skills to anticipate their moves, create openings, and control the tempo of the bout.
It's about knowing when to adapt and when to stick to your guns,
Mm.
so to speak. This is so eye-opening. I never thought about using a psychological model to analyze my opponents.
And here's another layer. The Ofmann Quadrant can be a powerful tool for communication between coaches and fencers. If a coach understands their student's quadrant, they can tailor their training approach to better suit the student's needs.
That's a brilliant point. Instead of using a one-size-fits-all approach, the coach can create a more personalized training plan. That helps each fencer reach their full potential.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that everyone learns and grows differently. And for you listeners out there, think about this. You can even use the Ofmann Quadrant to have more productive conversations with your own coach.
So instead of just saying, I'm struggling with this, I could say, hey, coach, I think this might be one of my challenges. Based on my Ofmann Quadrant, do you have any tips for how I can work on this?
Precisely. It provides a common language for discussing strengths, weaknesses, and areas for growth.
I love how this model can be applied on so many levels. From individual training to team dynamics to communication with coaches, it's really a game changer. For anyone who wants to take their fencing to the next level, what would you say is the most important takeaway for our listeners, expert speakers? So this whole Ofmann Quadrant has been pretty mind-blowing. What's the one thing you want our listeners to walk away with?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that the Ofmann Quadrant, it's a tool, not a label. You know, it's not about boxing yourself in, but about gaining that self-awareness. So you can make conscious choices about your training and how you approach challenges on the piste. It's a journey of self-discovery.
I love that. It's about empowering yourself to become the best fencer you can be. It's not about fitting into a mold, but about figuring out what works best for you. So listener, what are your core fencing qualities? Are you a player, a methodical fencer, a determined fencer, or an analyst? And what are some challenges you're ready to tackle? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to check out our sponsor, Fencing Family on Etsy, for some awesome fencing gear. To support your journey, the link is in the description. Until next time, keep those blades sharp and those minds even sharper.